Oh, so I wrote that email about like a client that kind of came to me and was like, everything's going well. Like I'm ahead in terms of like stuff I had to do. I'm ahead in terms of my launch goals, like all of this stuff. So what am I missing? And I feel like that's a really perfect place to start this conversation because it holds both of those pieces. It's like I really struggled to feel ahead in terms of like getting the work I need to have done, really struggled to feel ahead in terms of being where I'm supposed to for my goals. And then even when I get there, I'm almost like looking around, like, what am I missing? Something is not right. Like this is not where I'm like supposed to be. And I think that's what's really helpful to name here is that even when all the circumstances line up, we tend to be in this posture of like, well, clearly this can't be true. Something must be wrong. I must be forgetting something. I must be missing something else. And the thing that that illustrates that I think is the point of this conversation is that's true because you'd have to shift so many patterns to let this be true, right? It's not because it's not true, right? Like if we could say like, oh, I'm ahead on all this launch stuff and I'm ahead on my goals, like objectively, it is true that this person is ahead. But what is also true is that to feel ahead, to let yourself sit in that, to feel safe in that, to acknowledge its truth would mean so much more, right? Like it would mean not just being like, oh yeah, this is true. Anyway, moving on. It would mean you would have to shift so many patterns about what you have decided is true about yourself, about what you have decided is what's safe, right? For so many of us, we only feel safe when there's always this constant gap that we're supposed to be filling. When we're like, okay, working toward that, working toward that, working towards this, gotta get that done. Like, even though that's like a very activated place to be, for a lot of us, it is like what feels like normalcy to our systems, right? It's like what our nervous system is used to being at. And so when we're not there, we're still reaching for ways to be there, right? Because we go to what feels normal, not what is actually safe for us, right? Normal and safe get kind of like woven together in our brains. And we can't really separate them out. Like, oh yeah, it might be normal that I'm like always feeling behind, but like that's not actually where my safety lies. Like that's actually really gonna burn me the fuck out over time. Does that make sense? Right. But when we're so used to operating in that place constantly, and when we're deriving most of our safety from the like normalcy of operating from there, when we get to a different outcome, we're just going to look for it. We're just going to try to recreate it. We're just going to try to replicate it, right? So even when we're ahead, it doesn't matter. Like the physical outcomes don't matter because we're reaching so hard for that place where we can go into our old pattern. Does that make sense? I feel like I'm not explaining this well. We're going to get into details, but like that is such a big piece of it. Hi, Finola. It's so good to see you. Hi, Ari. Good to see you. Thank you for being here. Um, so that's the point, right? Is that most of us that are that like high achiever, I think I said this in the email, like eldest daughter, millennial that got raised on the idea that like you can get everything you want and have it all at once if you just work hard enough for it. Like our conditioning says strive, 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 do more, do more, do more, do more, right? And so anytime we even reach the like quote unquote like top of the mountain, we're like, no, 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 this is not good. This is not safe. I must be missing something. I'm supposed to be trying harder, right? Okay, makes sense. Good, good, good. So when we get there, we have to go, oh yeah, I can't keep, well, let me say this differently. So what most of us do when we get there is we go, well, I'll just move the goalpost, right? So we're like, this is, it's uncomfortable to sit in the fact that I have like achieved the things. And so the easiest thing for me to reach for is to move the goalpost, right? It's not to sit in like, oh yeah, I'm like where I need to be. Like I have the results I want. I'm ahead on what I want. Like, what does it look like to like take in the view, so to speak? What does it look like to take a deep breath? What does it look like to rest in this? What does it look like to feel safe in this? We're like, fuck that shit. What else? What's next? Give me my next goalpost. Move this. This is uncomfortable. This is not familiar. Absolutely fucking not. Right? We are going to what is familiar. And then what's hard about doing that inside our industry is our industry tells you that's the right version. It tells you like if you're not moving forward, you're moving backwards, or like you should always be after more, you should always be wanting more, right? And so it gets conditioned in. And then we also see people doing it, right? We're seeing everybody else move their goalposts all the time. And so we just think like that is the way we are supposed to be. Like that feels like the literal, like, path we are supposed to be walking no matter what, right? Too relatable. Hey, Julie, it's good to see you. Lindsay said yes. And I think a false fear of if I'm not behind, and instead I'm caught up or ahead and I'm going to show up for my business and am I going to show up for my business and be motivated? Yes. That's a great point, Lindsay. We source so much of our motivation from like almost feeling behind. And it's like, oh, if I breathe for a minute, then I'll just stay in that forever. Like I'll never try. Or if I acknowledge that I hit a goal or that I feel good, like all of my motivation leaves my body. And I think that's like a normal fear. I've never actually seen someone like experience that as reality, but I do think it's a fear when that's been the program you're running for so long. And when you can't get off that treadmill, you're almost like, if I stop the treadmill, I'll never get back on. And typically, when we feel like if I stop the treadmill, I'll never get back on, what we're really saying is I'm closer to burnout than I realize because we're like, I don't feel good enough in this that I would want to get back on the treadmill. So if I stop, I'm probably going to stay stopped. Do you know what I mean? Again, I've never seen that be true, but I do think that can be sometimes like a flag for us of like, wait, this feels even worse than I've like let on because I'm scared if I stop, I could never get myself to do it again. Like that's not how it should feel, really. You know what I mean? So we move the goalpost, right? And then after we move the goalpost, we then almost immediately, and I literally mean like almost immediately, I've seen this in myself, I've seen this in my clients go into, see, I should be further ahead. I now have this goal of X and I'm not hitting it. Look at how much I suck. And it's like, wait. But you just moved the goalpost like this morning. And our brain's like, yeah, see, what a loser. Like, how could you possibly not have achieved that yet? How could you possibly be this far behind? Right. And it's like, because I moved the goalpost 3 hours ago, like that. Right. But like that happens so immediately in our brains. And again, then like we're in this weird thing where our system sort of takes a sigh of relief because it's like, oh, okay, familiar. Yep. See, I'm behind again. Woo, okay, right? There's this piece of us that's like called to that familiar, but then there's other piece of us that's just constantly reinforcing this pattern that like we can never get ahead. We're always behind. We're always not doing it good enough. We're always not doing enough. We're always not quite there. And what I've seen over time with a lot of clients is if you like get the grooves in too deep, so to speak, in your brain on the idea that like you're never quite there, you will end up creating that experience in your business over and over and over and over again. And it really can make you want to quit. Like, it really can make you come to this point where you're just like, I don't like this business. Like, I'm just never there. And it's so demoralizing. I can't hold that. And so for a little bit, that might be motivating, but over time, like it can become so hopeless when you're constantly in that groove that you could just get to a point where you're like, honestly, fuck it. Right. And you don't need to be at that point, is like, the point, I guess I'm trying to make is like, you really don't have to get there. But if you're not careful, that constant wiring will get you there pretty quick. Um, Megan said this feels like it could be a who am I if I'm not achieving identity issue. Totally. Yes. No, I said, oh boy, you're in my brain. Yes. Right. So what Megan's saying is like, it's like, who am I without always being behind or always having another goal? And for a lot of people, like that is almost like the thing of their identity is to like always be going after something. And listen, I think it's really possible to hold having goals that you go after without doing this whole thing in your brain constantly. It really is possible to hold both. But I would say like, that takes a lot of this unwiring that we're going to talk about. So that is why it is so hard to feel ahead, is because number one, your system does not feel safe in that. That does not feel comfortable to it. That does not feel like what you identify with. And number two, the more and more you reinforce that experience, the more it becomes entrenched, the more it becomes your identity, the more you tell these stories about yourself that like you are someone who's just always a little bit behind or who can always never quite get it or who's never doing as well as everyone else, right? I have like the perfect example of this from a client call I had recently. Okay. So this client came to me and she was like, I am just not where I need to be right now. I think like I'm just not doing a good job. I really need to be like tougher on myself, all this stuff. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like I was almost like, are we in the same reality? So I did what I do in those situations with a client where I'm like, are we in a shared reality or what's happening here? And so I was just like asking her questions. I'm like, okay, well, like how many followers have you added in the last month? Okay, how many downloads did your podcast get in the last month? Okay, how much did your Substack grow in the last month? And it was astronomical. It was like, oh, I've added like 1,000 new followers on Instagram. My podcast is getting like 13,000 downloads. Oh yeah, my Substack, I grew by like several hundred subscribers last month. Like, and I'm like, okay, so what more would you need there to feel ahead? Like, were you trying for 2,000 Instagram follower growth and you didn't get it? Or like, what would be the difference? And she was like, I have no fucking idea. Right? Like, it like almost broke her brain to be like, oh, I don't even know. Like, I just know that I am supposed to feel like I'm not where I need to be. And I'm supposed to be giving myself a hard time about that. And the more I give myself a hard time about that, then hopefully that will get me achieving the goals. And it's like, okay, well, then so what's the goal? And she's like, right? Like she was achieving the goals, right? She was doing like across the board. That's why I gave that example because it's like in every realm, she's hitting the goals, right? But her brain is saying to her, no, you're not. No, you're not. No, you're not. You're bad. And you're going to lose motivation, which I think is like what we talked about earlier. And so for this client, she was like, okay, so do I just need to like set a goal and then I'll know if I hit it? And it's like, sure, that could be helpful, like to be like, okay, I want to grow by, 1,000 more followers next month, and then I can actually tell myself I hit that. I think that can be like a very corrective experience to like actually have a goal and like show yourself hitting the goal. But it's so much deeper than that, right? It's, I really, really need to change the wiring that says, I am never doing enough. I am always behind. I am always the person who is one step behind everybody else. I'm always the person who has to try a little bit harder than everyone else. And because it's so self-fulfilling, it is so self-fulfilling. Like, I can't even tell you how much we just create that circumstance and how much it has nothing to do with the actual results we're getting. Like again, I literally can think of like 500 versions of this. I had a client message me this morning and she had messaged me over the weekend and was basically like, oh my God, I gotta get my shit together, blah, 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 blah. And then she messaged me this morning and was like, so your team sent me a message about updating my testimonial, and I saw because so I write down a lot of my client results as they share them. So when we send a testimonial request to people, we'll usually be like, "Hey, like we'd love to get a testimonial, reminding you these are some of the incredible results you've gotten recently." And one of them for hers was like a 54K sales week. And she was like, yes. And I got that email this morning and I'm like being reminded that like I had a 54K sales week and like maybe I'm not like as behind as I think I am and stuff like that. And so it literally never matters what the circumstances are. Like a 54K sales week is incredible. The results I said earlier are incredible. Like it literally never will matter. You could make I've seen this too. Like you could make $1 million in a year and you could be like, yeah, but at this stage in my business, I really should have made double that. And you will say that with so much conviction and so much certainty and so much like the sky is blue kind of energy, right? And I think sometimes as a coach, like I know for me, I have to like really be present in the session and really be in my body for some of this stuff because if not, like someone will say it with so much conviction, you almost want to run with it. Like you almost want to be like, yeah, okay, so what would it have taken to like double this? And then you're like, wait, what the fuck are we talking about? Like, no, this is a pattern and we need to unwind it. And so for me, like I have to stay so like present to that because someone will say it with so much conviction that it's just like, yeah, 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 okay. Well, anyway, because that is how deep our brains have this group, right? Megan said, so smart to remind them of all you accomplished together when requesting a testimonial. Yes. Tara said, oh my God, a 54 sales K week and I'm behind should not be in the same sentence. Right. Manali said there isn't an enough, even when we think XYZ will be that for us. Exactly. Perfectly said. Um, just said 54K sales week. Yeah. But I was behind on sales. So I really needed it. Oh my God. Exactly. That like I almost promise you that's what she would have said. She would have been like, yeah, but I like really had to get my shit together then. So you're so right. Nova said I see for need for regular arrival and celebration parties and rite of passage rituals. Recently, I initiated personal certificate making gatherings. Oh, I love that. And we each made a speech like we were at a stage at an award ceremony. Oh my God, obsessed with that, Nova. That's so cool. So cool. Would love to know how you see someone rewiring this. Yes, let's get into that. So the point is, there is no there, right? There is no moment where you're like, oh, yeah, here's where I've been waiting for. And now I feel like I'm ahead. And now I feel whatever. Megan said, okay, it sounds so ridiculous when you say it, like, how silly are we being? But also, it's so real when my brain says it. Oh my God, totally. It's so real. Like that's what I'm saying. Like even as a coach, I have to be very like alert and present to that because it will just come out so real and so true that you're like, yeah, okay. Right. And same thing within our brains. Like when we're like, oh yeah, just like move the needle. That makes sense. I always should be achieving the next goal. Da, da, da. And it's like it just feels so sensical, but it's like actually not, right? And that's why we have to catch it. So that's where we have to do the work of rewiring. So I think there's a lot that goes into this, and like all of us have different reasons that we have this wiring or different experiences that gave us this wiring. I mean, I think there's like very much that sort of like like female millennial culture that we grew up in, where it just was basically like, you can have it all, right? And you should work your absolute ass off to get it. And, I think like so much of that, like, we grew up sort of like so many of us saw like Devil Wears Prada or Sex in the City, and we're like, I just want to be like in an office in stilettos and climb the corporate ladder and like make all this money and be such a success. And like I think there's so much of that conditioning that we all kind of like grew up in. So there's like a kind of like cultural layer to that. Then I think there's also like the other layers underneath that of like what were our personal experiences growing up. You know what I mean? Like, were we always valued for like getting the good grades, or was that the only time we got attention? Or, were we mostly praised for like how hard we had to work at something? Or, were we actually like really what's the word, ostracized or talked down to when something wasn't hard for us, like I feel like that's a lot of my clients experiences. Like I have a few clients that were like division 1 athletes or different things like that, and it's almost like because they were so good at their thing, people were so mean to them about it, and now they've gotten in this pattern of over proving themselves constantly. They're like, well, I don't want anyone to think this is easy for me, so like don't worry, it's really hard and I have to work really really hard, and, da, da, da. And it's like so self-protective to be like, I want everyone to know that it's like so difficult for me. Or I don't want anyone to think like I didn't have to like work my ass off to get here. And so it depends on like what our own personal flavor is of that. But like the first rewiring is figuring that out, is figuring out like what story lives in my body that's not even mine. What story was conditioned into me that like I don't even resonate with. Like that's not even mine. That like someone handed to me and like kind of like wired into my brain without my like consent or approval. And I think that that's a really, really, really helpful starting point, because when we can start to like decouple even a little bit of that, it really gets easier to be like, am I really gonna let those bitches that like made me feel bad on my soccer team dictate the story of my life and business today? Fuck that. Like it can kind of like bring about this like absolutely not sort of thing. Because right now, when it feels like the sky is blue, it feels like it's ours, it's our story, it's our thing. We're like, what if that's not true? Like, what if that was a story that got like put on in, right? That wasn't even mine. Like, even that like fracture of the two between like the sky is blue and like, what if this isn't even mine, is really helpful as a starting point. Megan said, as a former D1 athlete, can confirm this is very true. I'm so sorry. I feel like for so many of my clients that have that experience, I'm like, man, that shit fucks women up so hard. Yes, this isn't my story, Manali. Um, so when you're like, okay, this isn't mine, it doesn't mean it still doesn't live in your body and your system and it still doesn't feel true sometimes. But it also means you have a little bit more empowerment. You have a little bit more choice in being like, well, if I wrote that story, what would it be? Right? Or for one of my clients, her and I were talking about this, and she has young girls. And I was like, what is the story you're trying to like wire into your girl's brain? Like, you're choosing that story. She's a very thoughtful present mom. And I'm like, so what's the story for them? Like, is that what you want it to be for you? So it's like when we feel somewhat at choice about the story we're telling, and realizing that like someone else dictated that for a long time and now we get to tell a new one, I think that can be a real open door. But for a lot of us, like we don't even get to that point. We don't even question it because it feels so true. So that's like the part I want to illustrate. Like it will feel like, no, this is how it is, right? But that's the work to be like, but how, where did that come from? Like, how did I learn that? Because I learned that somewhere. Like that did not, I did not get born with that etched into my brain, right? Megan said, am I really going to let them dictate the story of my life? Right. So if I didn't get born with that etched into my brain, where did it get etched in? And like, where do I want to choose differently? So then once you choose differently is when it gets hard. I know it sucks. Um, then you have to try to live into this new version of it, which is going to be very uncomfortable in your body. Right. So if you choose the story of like, let's say, so I'll use one of my core stories. One of my core stories that I've like now told myself for a really long time is that like when I'm lit up, everything in my life gets better. Okay. The people around me are better. The people around me are happier. My results are better. My work is better. My life is better. Like when I'm lit up, everything is better. I'm a generator. So take that for what it's worth. Um, but when I started telling that story, and I started having to choose like what is the thing that lights me up, there was so much discomfort in that, right? Because it felt so irresponsible. It felt so self-centered. It felt so ridiculous, right? Because my stories were way more about like how I impacted other people, like not what my personal feeling lit up experience was. Like that's how I would have seen it. And then like, oh, I want to be lit up. Like that's how I would have seen it. And equally, like that's what I like want to be true and had glimpses of being true. And so I was like, okay, well, if this is going to be my story, I have to start living like that's true because I have to have enough corrective experiences of that to start really believing it. So meaning I had to go, okay, I'm in a situation where I can either choose the thing that lights me up and that's really like giving me that juice, or I can choose something that will make everyone around me more comfortable. Oh, fuck. I have to choose this one if I want the story to be different. Oh, shit. That is so fucking hard. Oh my God, that makes me want to vomit. Right? It's tough. It is tough to choose that. It is tough to act in alignment with that. But then every time you do, you wire in a little more safety around that. Like, wow, okay. I chose the thing that lit me up and like that actually worked out really well. Interesting. Next time, oh wow, that was really, really hard, but like, fuck, that was a good choice. Next, okay, wow, that actually felt good that time. Like, okay. Like, and it gets better and better, but like, we have to have enough of the experience of something being different to truly feel safety around it. If we don't have enough new experiences, we're going to be stuck in our old experiences constantly, right? And so our work is how can I create new experiences of this story in action instead of just like, how do I believe differently while I'm still living in this past version of myself? Does that make sense? Lindsay said, totally so hard. Feelings aren't facts. Amen. Jess said, by corrective experiences, do you mean collecting enough evidence for the news story, basically? Yeah, so it's almost like showing your nervous system or your brain, your body, whatever, that this new experience is actually safe, positive, good for you, helpful, useful. Like insert whatever thing, but it all really comes down to like safety. Right, because the reason we don't want to like stop chasing the goal so prevalently and intensely or whatever is because we think it's not safe. We think we won't be worthy and then we'll be ostracized, or we think other people will judge us and then we won't be safe, or we think like we won't be able to keep getting our results and then we'll be really unsafe. So it's like we need enough new experiences of like, oh yeah, I did that and I'm still safe. Oh yeah, I did that and I'm better off. Oh yeah, I did that and actually I'm overflowing. I'm not even just safe. I'm abundant, whatever. Um, but we have to like try it. And I think that that's where all of this gets really like sticky is yes, we have to do mindset work. We have to do rewiring. We have to like journal. We have to tell ourselves a new story. But like at the foundational element is we have to act from that new story, even and especially when it feels incredibly fucking uncomfortable and disorienting to act from that story. You know what I mean? Yeah, but not always same. Even when the new experience feels uncomfortable. The new experience never, ever, ever feels comfortable at first. And that is 100% of the reason why change is difficult for most people. Like, full stop, hands down. Most people don't not change because they don't like know it would be better if they did something differently. They don't change because they hit a wall with that, right? They get to a point where they're like, this is so uncomfortable. And then their brain, which hates discomfort, hates unfamiliarity, will go, see, stop. It means it's bad. This was the wrong move. I literally did a reel on this recently where I was talking about something with my therapist. And I set a boundary and then I went to my therapist and was like, well, I like basically almost vomited and had a panic attack. So like clearly that wasn't the right thing. And she was like, bitch, no, like that was definitely the right thing, right? But my brain was so deeply trying to convince me that because it was incredibly uncomfortable, it was definitely the wrong thing. That's what we have to work against so heavily. And we have to create safety in our body while we're experiencing that, right? Um, so it's like that experience for me, what I needed to go do was like create feelings of safety in my body after having it instead of being like, well, I just won't repeat that experience again. You know what I mean? Um, and literally, this is the fundamental reason most people won't change is because it feels like it will be incredibly, incredibly uncomfortable, which our brain tells us is unsafe, and then we can't get through it. But like, this is also why business is so fucking cool because it gives us a million opportunities all day, all the time to create these new experiences, to facilitate these new experiences, to literally serve up on a silver platter for ourselves the new experience we're trying to have. So, in this exact example of like, I can't get ahead, the experience would be what if I did some shit that was on my list? I decided what that was for the day. I did it all. And instead of looking for another fire to put out, I actually just was like, cool, I'm done for the day. I'm going to stop an hour early. Oh my God. Everything my brain tells me that's a bad idea. I should get more ahead. That seems so unsafe. I'm not at my income goal yet for this month. Blah, 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 blah. Okay. It's going to be really uncomfortable and I need to stop anyway. Wow. I'm feeling so much discomfort in my body walking away from work right now. Wow. I actually feel like I could throw up. Wow. I feel really unsafe. What would it look like to go do some grounding right now? What would it look like to get my body safe? What would it look like to go touch some fucking grass or drink some cold water and like calm my system down? Okay. And then you do that and you go, huh, I kind of had a nice afternoon. That's interesting. Everything seems fine. Nothing went up in flames. My business isn't, you know, going away, whatever. And the more you do little things like that, the more you are at choice about it. It doesn't mean you'll never decide, oh, I'm going to work a little bit more today. Like, that's not the point, right? It means you're never going to feel like you absolutely cannot step away, right? Or like you are always, always behind. And then the second benefit is you're not like if you believe in manifestation, right? You're not going to be manifesting these situations where you're constantly behind because it's the story you're constantly telling, right? So the more you like let yourself feel ahead, the more you will be ahead. Like it sort of is that simple, right? The more you like what Nova was saying earlier, like celebrate these goals, the easier it is to hit your goals, right? I will tell you that hands down. I've seen that with myself and my clients 100% of the time. The more someone celebrates their wins, the more wins they get. Full stop. I see that in my own business. When I've been in seasons of celebrating every win, I get more of them. When I let go of those, it feels harder, right? And it's not really a chicken or the egg thing. It's not like, oh, yeah, well, did you just let go of celebrating them because you weren't getting as many? No. I let go of celebrating them because, like, they felt almost like, oh, duh, I always get these goals. And I just got bored with them, right? And instead of like fanning that flame of being like, no, this is amazing. This is exciting. Like, this is important. I stopped. And then guess what happens? The results stop feeling as easy. The thing that is also hard about this is depending on how much Wiring, experiences we have that tell us the opposite. This is sort of like a lifelong effort. And I think that's also really depressing in some ways. Um, like my must be perfect, in control, always after something millennial conditioning, it still lives inside my body and I still have to like work against that a lot of the time. It's easier than it ever has been. I imagine it will continue to get easier. And I have to watch for it. Like, I think this is where we can kind of get frustrated sometimes of like, okay, yeah, but shouldn't I just get to that point where like it's never a thing? I don't know. I think that a lot of the emotional experiences we have are young, create some deep grooves in our brain. Like I think sometimes people have like these massive shifts when they have something like a near death experience or something like that. But I think if you're just sort of like lightly moving the needle over time and trying to give yourself some new experiences, like again, it will get easier, but like you're still going to have a lot of that emotional conditioning in there that may never fully go away. It's just going to feel a lot easier to solve for. Like what it looks like for me to like stop work and take a break now versus then is so different. Like so different. Like I remember there being a time where I just said it's about the journey, whatever. I know. It's so annoying. I remember there being a time where in this Facebook group, I would feel like I needed to like report in if I was like gonna not be in the group for the weekend. Like I'd be like, okay, I'm going to like take a couple of days off, but if you guys need anything, message me. Like now saying it, I'm like, that is so fucking funny. Like nobody gives a fuck if I'm not like on my socials for a weekend. But there was a time where even stepping away like that, I felt like, oh my God, how dare I? Now I don't even have to think twice about that. Like it's not even a thing because I gave myself enough experiences of being like, who fucking cares if you're in there or not? Like that does literally nothing one way or the other for your business, but it definitely burns you out. So just fucking stop. Um, Enough experiences of that where I see that now. But the wiring that made me believe that isn't totally gone. It just like, moves, is a different flavor, is a little easier to catch. I can like see it sooner when I'm like this weekend, it kind of happened. I was like, my mom was like, "Oh, can I play with Bennett for a couple hours?" And um I was like, "Oh, what should I use those for? Like, should I get like a head on a bunch of work or should I?" And like immediately like that's where my brain went and then I was like, "There's nothing I have to do right now. Like I'm not literally behind on anything. Like no, I should not use that to get ahead on work, but like I still have to like go through the thought process and I'm still pulled in a certain direction 9 times out of 10. I just like am quicker to rewire it, re-engage it. And then I have those 2 hours to do other things. And I'm like, oh, I'm so glad I used that time in a different way. Again, proactive experience, right? It was really good to use that time in a different way. I like don't feel like I made the wrong choice. I feel good. I feel like that was, a healthy decision for me, right? So I say all that to say it is possible to make this feel different, but it is still going to be like the work in many cases. It is still going to be something that you have to find your edge on, but it will also be worth it because it will give you like a happier life that doesn't look like feeling like you're always the one that's just a little bit behind or that has to work harder than everybody else or that never quite gets there or what like ugh, right? Um and this is an important one. It doesn't mean you don't chase goals, right? It doesn't mean you don't want more. It just means that you don't think the path to that, the path to getting more, is your burnout, is your overworking, is you're just doing 10 things more, is you needing to be harder on yourself, is you needing to like get your shit together, right? Like that's it. It's like you can still want what you want, you can still go after what you want. It's just not with that same flavor of like must always be striving. I'm always behind, right? It's with the flavor of like, well, if I accomplish all this, that probably can't be that hard. Well, if I got all this done, that feels pretty simple. Like it's just a different energy, right? Um, so freeing, I feel like this is the difference in enjoying your biz versus not. Exactly. Exactly. Manal, I said, how do you work with your brain if you take a break and you do see things slow down or see the old pattern confirmed in some way? Obviously, our brain is like looking for it not to work. Do you just reframe for how it is still working, even when it feels like it doesn't seem like it is? Let me think of my answer to that. So I would say, like, for if like, a client said that to me, if she was like, okay, but I did slow down last month and like my views went down on Instagram, I would be like, okay, well, then we need to find a way that you can be consistent on Instagram without totally sacrificing yourself or your time. Like, we just need a new plan. Like, that doesn't mean you can't slow down. It means the plan was the wrong plan, right? So I would just try to make it pretty neutral. And it's just almost like my sacrifice isn't the strategy, right? So it's like if that strategy wasn't working, the strategy can't be like, well, I just don't slow down. The strategy has to be like, okay, do we need someone else on your team? Do we need a different plan? Do we need to take this thing off your plate, which isn't getting that many results? So we have more time for you to show up here. Like, it's kind of like neutralizing it a little bit more almost. I'm trying to think of like a really concrete example, but I think that makes sense, right? It's like it doesn't mean we never have to like adjust a strategy or whatever. It just means like the answer isn't constantly like, well, I'll just do more. Okay. Um, okay, good. Yeah, yeah. One of my clients kind of had this situation recently where like she wrote some emails that performed really well when usually she would have her team do it. And she was like, oh my gosh, does this just mean I have to write them all or whatever? And we're like, well, maybe. But if you write them all, something else has to come off your plate. So what's the trade-off? Like, is it better to get this other thing off your plate, or is it better to like be okay with the results your team is getting? Like that, it's not, that's a trade-off we have to play with. It's not, okay, yeah, we're probably just gonna have to like do a ton more. That just looks how it looks. That's where we can't constantly go because we know logically that is a recipe for disaster, burnout, stress. And that will ultimately be the thing that like ruins your business. Like most, I don't know anybody that's like, oh, well, I took a little time to rest and it just absolutely ruined my business. Most people I know are like, I worked way too hard and I burned out. Like, you really think about like the narrative you hear from most successful people in business, it's almost never like, yeah, well, I took that 1 week of vacation and everything went downhill from there. You know what I mean? Or like, oh, I took my lunches to read my Kindle instead of answer emails. And like, that's where it all went sideways. Like, right? You know what I mean? Like, never. It's almost always like, well, I like did way, way, way too much and I just couldn't sustain it. And I got to a point where I was basically like a fucking frozen banana on the couch and then I burn it all to the ground. So I think it's remembering that too. And so knowing, yeah, sometimes we have to adjust the strategy, but like that can be neutral if you're not constantly telling yourself a story about like how you suck and need to perform better. So I'm trying to think if there's anything else I have to say about this. Let me look at my notes. Um, mm, mm. Another piece of the identity I want to say is this identity of like, I'm never quite there. I think it really spreads to a lot of other things in your business. Um, because when you see yourself as that, someone who is never quite there, that is not a neutral thing to see yourself as, I guess. It's not like you're like, oh, I'm someone who's 5'5", right? Where it's like could be neutral. It's like maybe you're not that tall or maybe you're short to someone, but like you could see it as neutral. But like when you're saying I'm always someone that's like never quite there, that is not a neutral orientation to yourself. That is a negative orientation to yourself. And so it tends to like spread everywhere. And I see this with clients a lot. Like where when they see themselves like that, it's like almost like they think everyone sees them like that. Like they'll go to a thing and they'll be like, yeah, well, I was at this event, but like I just didn't feel like I fit in. I'm like I know you, I know your personality. You are someone that is like so easy to talk to. That probably fits in really well. Like it probably is more of the story you're living in that like everyone else thinks you're like not quite good enough or quite behind. And so I wanted to say that too because it lends itself to 100 other things like Instagram, whatever. social, marketing, events. Like there's always this idea of like, if I see myself that way, I assume everyone else does too. And so it stunts my growth in a whole lot of other ways in terms of like relationship building, where it's like, it makes you think your clients are constantly like, she's not doing enough. Like it feeds all of this other stuff. And so I wanted to say that too, because it's not just like, oh, it's hard to like hit goals. It's like it becomes this sort of like cancer that can go everywhere and like take over everything if you're not careful with catching it. Jess said, what does neutral orientation to yourself sound like in your brain? Asking for a friend. Um, I just meant like you seeing yourself as someone who is like always behind isn't like neutral, which like most of us don't have a neutral orientation to ourselves. We typically either have like a positive orientation or a negative. Like I don't really know anybody that just has like neutrality to themselves totally. But what we're trying to shoot for is like more positive than not, right? So when you're constantly seeing yourself in this like negative, she's never quite there light, everything you do will be colored by that, not just your goals, not just your rest, your relationships, your experiences, your business, your team, your clients, like everything will have that flavor to it. And so that's another reason it's really important to do this, because if you aren't careful, like that becomes the narrative everywhere. Oh, my clients don't think I'm doing enough. Oh, on social, just people just don't really like tend to listen to me. Oh, when I go to events, like I'm just usually the one that's like not where everyone else is, or right. And so this work matters not just because you deserve rest and you deserve to celebrate your goals and you deserve to have a business that feels good, but because you deserve to have like life and experience that feel good too, right? Like you deserve to have a world that feels like it's reflecting back positivity to you instead of a world where you're just constantly noticing and looking for and scanning for the ways where like other people also think you're the chick that's always behind. Like, fuck that shit. Do you know what I mean? Megan says journaling is helpful to see yourself more neutrally. In my head, it's easy to be a negative Nancy, but when I look at it on paper, I'm like, well, of course, this is hard. You're actually doing a great job. Yes, I love that. I think something out of your head is very helpful, right? It's like we were talking about decoupling that story earlier. Like when you can see that story is not even yours, you can look at it from a different angle. When you have to write stuff down, you can like see it from a different angle, right? That's what Megan's saying. Like when I have to put it on paper, like I'm like outside of myself looking at it instead of it living here. Obviously talking to a coach, like all of those things. But I definitely feel like what was I gonna say? Yeah, the goal isn't like that you have to be like self-neutral. The goal is you have enough separation from these stories that you can question them, right? So journaling gives us separation, talking it out gives us separation, identifying that story as someone else's gives us separation. What we're really trying to do is like pull these things apart, right? How far can we pull them apart so that it does not feel like the sky is blue when we say it? It does not feel like this is the truest truth about me. It feels like, oh, this is a story that got put into my head when I was like 10. Fuck that, you know? It doesn't mean you don't still live it sometimes. It doesn't mean you don't still feel activation around it. It just means like you see it for what it is a little bit more. And that is where things start to shift. And that's where, I guess like the snowball can start rolling down the mountain, and like pick up more positive momentum as it goes. So I hope this helps. I think this is such a normal thing. I think like so many of us high achievers do this, and it's like why we get amazing results sometimes because we're willing to like keep trying even when it's hard. But there's also like declining value on the other side of that sometimes is that like, yes, we want to have belief in ourselves. We want to like show up even when things are difficult, but that can't be the only lever we ever have to pull because if it's the only lever we ever have to pull, we have a short lifespan on our business. Um, because we can only pull it so many times before like it breaks, it burns us out, it makes us feel hopeless, it makes us feel like it's not worth it. Like it just can't be the only one. So I hope this helps. I'm with you. I get it. Been there in it all the time. Like this is the work. But it does get better and easier over time. So thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you for listening to my thoughts on this, and I will talk to y'all next week. Bye, guys.